The air inside the plane was heavy with cries that refused to stop the millionaire. Woman sat near the front in first class, clutching her baby, who screamed with red cheeks and tiny fists shaking in the air. No one could calm the child. No toy, no lullaby, no gentle rocking seemed to help. The mother looked flawless in her designer dress and gold jewelry, but her face was breaking with frustration and shame. Passengers all around turned their heads with rolling eyes. Some whispered in annoyance. Others sighed loudly, pretending to cover their ears with blankets. The sound of the crying baby became unbearable, as if it was pressing into every corner of the cabin. The flight attendants moved quickly, offering bottles of warm milk, toys, soft blankets. But the baby screamed louder. The millionaire mother snapped at them, her voice sharp. She demanded silence. She demanded comfort, yet nothing worked. The wealthy passengers beside her avoided looking, as if afraid of sharing her humiliation. One man, in a suit, muttered that first class was no place for children. Another woman covered her face with a mask and shook her head. The mother hugged her baby tighter, rocking, but the child only howled harder. Meanwhile, in the economy section near the very back of the plane sat a poor black boy about 12 years old. His clothes were worn and his shoes old. His hands gripped the armrest tightly because he had never flown before. This was his first time on a plane. He had saved every coin for months to visit his grandmother in another state. The boy's eyes, wide with both fear and curiosity, scanned the cabin. He could hear the cries, piercing even through the walls of seats. The sound was unbearable, yet his eyes softened, not with annoyance, but with something else, a memory. The boy remembered nights when his little sister cried in the tiny apartment they shared with their mother. Sometimes their mother worked double shifts, and he would rock the baby sister on his lap, humming old songs. Their grandmother had taught them songs filled with love and patience, songs that somehow made the crying stop. He remembered the rhythm of the heart against his chest, the soft sound of comfort that came not from wealth but from warmth. As the cries grew louder on the plane, the millionaire mother raised her hand, pressing the flight attendant again, demanding why nothing could calm her baby. Her voice rising almost as loud as the baby's wail, frustration spilling out. She looked powerful in every way except now powerless against the child. Passengers began muttering louder, frustration spreading like fire. One man shouted that the flight should be refunded. Another said the baby needed to be removed. The pressure in the cabin grew heavy. Then the boy unbuckled his seat slowly, his small frame moving against the current of angry stares. He walked down the aisle step by step, his worn shoes tapping against the polished floor. No one noticed at first, but soon heads turned. Passengers frowned, whispering why a child from the back was walking toward first class. A flight attendant rushed to stop him, but the boy lifted his hand politely, his voice soft. "Let me try, please." The millionaire mother looked at him, shocked, her eyes narrowing. She was used to respect and distance, not a boy with cheap clothes asking to touch her baby. She almost refused. She almost shouted for him to leave, but the cries of her baby grew sharper, as if cutting her heart. Her pride battled with desperation. For a moment silence hung as the baby shrieked. The boy stood still in front of her, his hands trembling yet steady, his voice gentle. "I can help," he said. "I know what to do." His words carried no arrogance, no demand, only a strange calmness. The passengers leaned forward, curious, half amused, half doubtful. The mother scoffed, whispering, "How could a boy from economy class help, when even she, with all her wealth, could not?" But the baby twisted in her arms, screaming so hard it coughed and choked for a moment. Fear flickered in the mother's eyes. The boy took a slow breath, and then hummed softly, a tune simple like a whisper, floating through the air. Passengers who heard it frowned, confused. It was no song they knew, just a rhythm like waves against the shore. He hummed again, steady and calm, the sound so different from the chaos. It spread like a soft breeze cutting through the noise. The baby's cries faltered for a second, then returned, but weaker. The boy leaned closer, still humming the same rhythm. He extended his hand. The mother pulled back, instinctively, fear and pride colliding. She looked around, every passenger staring, waiting, judging her. If she allowed this poor boy to touch her baby, she would expose herself even more. But if she refused, and the baby kept crying, she would face their anger forever. Her lips trembled, then she loosened her grip. The boy gently touched the baby's tiny hand, his skin warm, his humming steady. The baby blinked its tear-filled eyes, staring up at the stranger. Something shifted. The cries softened from a storm to a whimper. The passengers froze. No one moved. The hum continued, gentle and calm, the baby's chest rising and falling Slowly, eyes beginning to close, the noise that filled the cabin for so long melted into silence. Gasps filled the air. The millionaire mother's mouth fell open. She had hired the best nannies in the world. She had spent thousands on doctors and medicine, yet this boy with nothing but a song and a gentle hand had done what she never could. She looked at him with a mixture of shock, shame, and something unspoken. Passengers whispered, some smiled in disbelief. Others clapped quietly. Though embarrassed, the flight attendants stood still, their trays forgotten. The cabin that was once a storm now turned into quiet awe. All eyes on the poor boy, who returned to his seat with no pride, no arrogance, only calm, his humming fading into the air like a secret carried by the wind. The mother clutched her baby, who now slept peacefully, against her chest, but her eyes followed the boy every step, her heart pounding not only from relief, but from a question forming deep inside. Why had this boy succeeded where she failed? What power did he hold? What story lay behind his gentle song? The plane flew steady through the clouds, passengers sitting in uneasy silence, their thoughts heavy. Not one of them could look at the boy without wondering, what kind of child could silence a storm with nothing but kindness? The mother's hands shook as she held her baby closer, but deep inside she felt her pride crumble, replaced by curiosity and something darker. The boy sat back in his seat, closing his eyes, his thoughts drifting to his sister, his grandmother, his mother, and the nights of hunger and silence. He never imagined that one day those small songs of survival would silence the cries of a millionaire's baby on a flight above the clouds. But this was only the beginning. Silence inside the plane did not feel like relief. It felt like a storm waiting to rise again. Passengers sat stiff in their seats, glancing between the millionaire mother and the poor boy who had just returned to the back of the cabin. The baby slept quietly, breathing against her mother's chest, yet the woman's face was pale, her pride wounded, and her thoughts tangled. She had always believed that money could solve everything, yet in this moment she had been powerless, while a boy with nothing had shown her strength. She could not understand. Her lips pressed together tightly. She avoided the eyes of other wealthy passengers, but their whispers still reached her ears. Some were mocking, some filled with judgment. One woman muttered that the mother could not even handle her own child. Another said it was shameful for someone so rich to be humbled by a child from economy. The words stung sharper than knives. A mother looked down at her baby, then back toward the aisle where the boy sat far away, his seat pressed against the rattling wall of the plane. She could barely see his head, yet her mind refused to let him go. Anger grew inside her, anger at the whispers, anger at the boy who had embarrassed her, anger at herself for allowing it to happen. She had spent years building an image of strength, elegance, and control, and in one short moment a boy had shattered it. In the back of the plane, the boy leaned his head against the window, staring at the endless clouds. His heart was steady, yet his hands still trembled. He was not used to so many eyes on him. He only wanted to help. The sound of the baby crying had reminded him too much of home, of long nights when he was the only one to bring peace. His grandmother always told him that kindness was the strongest weapon in the world, but he never imagined it would place him in the center of so much attention. Now he felt both heavy and light, as if he had carried a burden yet gained a new one at the same time. The passengers tried to relax. Some closed their eyes, pretending to sleep. Some pulled out headphones, but the silence was too loud. Everyone was thinking about the same moment, replaying it again and again. The millionaire mother rocked her child, who slept, but she could not escape the truth. The boy's humming still echoed in her ears, haunting her, reminding her of her weakness. She gripped her baby tighter, her nails pressing against the soft blanket. Hours passed. The plane continued its journey. The baby woke once, but instead of crying, it simply cooed softly. The mother froze her breath, catching in relief, yet also confusion. Was the effect of that boy still lingering? Was it possible that his song had left something deeper in the baby than just sleep? She shook her head, refusing to believe that a poor boy could have such influence, yet fear crawled into her chest. Finally, the captain's voice filled the cabin, announcing turbulence. Passengers buckled up, lights flickered, the plane shook. Slightly nervous murmurs spread across the cabin as the air outside roared. The millionaire mother tightened her grip on her baby, holding her close as fear cracked through her pride. She glanced around, other passengers whispering prayers, some clenching armrests. The poor boy in the back sat still, his eyes closed, humming again, so faint only the man beside him could hear. That turbulence grew harsher. Trays rattled. The baby stirred and began to whimper. Panic rose in the mother's chest. Her heart pounded. If the child began screaming again, She feared losing all respect completely. Her eyes darted toward the back of the plane. Though she hated the thought, part of her wanted the boy near once more, but pride chained her. She whispered soothing words, rocking faster. Her baby fussed louder. The plane jerked violently. Passengers gasped. Oxygen masks dangled overhead, though not released completely. Fear grew thick. The baby began crying again, louder this time, filled with terror. The sound cut through every scream of turbulence. The mother broke sweat, her hands shaking. She wanted to scream for help, yet she swallowed it, choking on her own pride. From the back, the boy unbuckled again, ignoring the sharp call of the flight attendant. He walked forward, steady, despite the shaking of the plane. Passengers watched, breathless. Some shouted for him to sit down, others fell silent. As if sensing something important, he reached the mother's seat. His eyes soft, his voice calm. "May I help?" Again the mother's lips parted, her eyes wide. She shook her head almost violently, but her baby's cries grew stronger, drowning every other sound. Passengers stared in judgment, waiting for her decision. Her pride screamed to refuse, but her heart pleaded to accept. Finally, tears welled in her eyes. She nodded slowly, her lips trembling. The boy touched the baby's hand once more, humming through the storm, his voice calm, steady, unwavering. Though the plane rattled and shook, his sound flowed like water, unbroken. The baby's cries weakened again, softer each moment, until silence returned. The mother stared at the boy, her tears sliding down her cheeks, pride collapsing into something else, something raw and painful. She whispered, "Thank you," though her voice cracked. The passengers gasped again, not at the baby but at the mother's words. The woman, known for her cold pride, had spoken with humility to a child from the back of the plane. It was a moment no one expected. Whispers turned into silence as all eyes turned forward. The turbulence slowly faded. The plane's steadied lights returned. The baby slept once more in peace. The boy stepped back quietly, ready to return to his seat, but this time the mother's hand reached out. She held his sleeve gently, her eyes still wet. "Wait," she said, her voice trembling. "Please sit here with us." The boy froze. Passengers froze. Flight attendants froze. No one expected it. The mother moved aside, offering a space beside her in first class. The boy hesitated, his heart racing, his instincts warning him, yet his kindness pulling him forward. Finally, he sat beside her, his worn clothes contrasting against her luxury dress. Passengers whispered louder, now some in disbelief, some in anger, some even in envy. The mother wiped her tears, staring at her baby, then at the boy, her voice low. "Who are you? What is your name?" The boy replied softly, "My name is David." His words carried no weight, no arrogance, just truth. She whispered, "David." She repeated, as if tasting the name with both fear and curiosity. As the hours passed, they spoke quietly, her questions sharp, his answers simple. She asked where he learned to calm babies. He told her about his sister, about nights of hunger, about his grandmother's songs. Her face shifted from disbelief to shame. She had never imagined such a life. She had never touched hunger, never touched poverty, never touched desperation. His words cut into her like blades, each one showing a world she had ignored all her life. Passengers pretended not to listen, yet every ear was open, every heart stirred by the strange connection forming between the richest woman on the plane and the poorest boy aboard. Whispers of fate, destiny, mystery filled their minds, but deep inside the mother, something darker grew, a thought she could not push away. If this boy could silence her baby so easily, what else could he do? What secrets did he hold? What hidden power had been placed in a child like him? She clutched her baby tighter, her eyes narrowing, though her lips smiled. Her thoughts turned like knives. David sat quietly, unaware of the storm brewing inside her, his humming fading softly into the cabin as the plane sailed through the night toward its unknown destiny. Though peace filled the air for now, something much greater than turbulence was waiting beyond the horizon. The night sky outside the plane was endless and black, the stars scattered like broken glass across the heavens. The engines roared steady, carrying hundreds of lives through the clouds. Yet inside the cabin, the air was not calm, it was heavy with questions. The wealthy passengers stared at the boy seated in first class, their eyes sharp with judgment, their whispers buzzing like bees. Some called him lucky, others called him shameless, but none of them could deny the truth. He had done what no one else could. He had silenced the cries twice. The millionaire mother sat stiff beside him, her baby sleeping peacefully, her heart torn between gratitude and suspicion. She studied David closely, his hands rough, his clothes worn, his eyes too calm for his age. She wanted to ask more. She wanted to know how a boy so poor could carry such strange power. Yet every time she looked into his eyes, she felt a shiver crawl up her spine, as if there was something hidden, something deeper than she could see. David sat quietly, his gaze fixed on the window, the reflection of his face blending with the clouds. His thoughts drifted to his grandmother, her voice in his memory singing the same tune he had hummed tonight. She always told him that the song carried more than melody. It carried soul. It carried the spirit of generations who had survived pain and loss. He remembered nights when the song was all they had, when hunger clawed their stomachs, when silence felt too heavy. The song kept them alive. And now it had carried across the sky into the heart of strangers. The mother leaned closer, her voice low. "David, do you realize what you did?" she asked. He turned his head slowly, his expression soft. "I only sang," he said, nothing more. She frowned, her lips tightening. Only sang, yet her baby, who never stopped crying, had fallen silent. Her pride cracked again. She felt a strange fear building inside, fear of the unknown power wrapped in his simple voice. Passengers around them could not hold their curiosity. One leaned forward, asking the boy where he came from. Another asked if he had special training. David answered each question with honesty. No training, no secret, only family, only love. His answers simple yet unsettling, because no one could understand how love alone could create such peace. The mother's heart burned her mind, whispering dangerous thoughts. She imagined people mocking her for being saved by a poor child. She imagined headlines. She imagined her reputation crumbling. She had built her empire on power, control, and dominance, and now one boy had shaken it all. What if people learned of this moment? What if they used it against her? Her fists clenched. She could not allow it. The plane lights dimmed. Passengers fell asleep one by one, but the mother stayed awake, her eyes fixed on David as he dozed beside her, his head resting lightly on the seat, his breathing steady. She studied him like a puzzle piece that did not fit into her world. She wondered if he had more secrets, if his song was just the beginning. Suddenly the baby stirred, waking again, eyes opening wide, but instead of crying, it turned its gaze toward David's small hands. Reaching out instinctively, the mother froze her chest, tightening. The baby ignored her touch, ignored her rocking, and reached only for the boy, still half asleep beside her. Panic rushed through her veins. Anger too. She shook her head, whispering, "No, no, this is my child, not yours." But the baby whined softly until David opened his eyes, his gaze meeting the tiny child's hand. He smiled faintly, humming once more. The baby settled instantly. The mother's breath caught her heart, twisted with jealousy. She felt invisible, as if her own child had chosen a stranger over her. Pride screamed in her chest, louder than the engines. She forced a smile, but inside she boiled. What magic had this boy woven into her child? The hours dragged heavy with silence, broken only by the soft hum of the engines and David's quiet breathing when the captain announced their arrival time. The passengers stirred, stretching, yawning, but whispers about the boy and the baby began again, louder. This time one man joked that maybe the mother should hire him. Another said maybe the boy was touched by angels. Another muttered maybe he was cursed. The words swirled through the cabin like poison, filling every ear. The mother's jaw tightened. She hated every whisper. She hated the pity. She hated the way people stared at her baby. She hated the boy who had become the center of it all. She thought of her empire, her reputation, her control, and she realized she could not leave this flight without reclaiming her power. As the plane descended, David closed his eyes once more, whispering a prayer to himself, for his grandmother, for his sister, for his mother who waited for him back home. He did not know that beside him the woman he had saved was drowning in shadows, planning what to do once they landed. Her baby slept against her chest, but her eyes stayed open, sharp and cold. The landing shook the plane wheels, screeching against the runway. Passengers clapped lightly, some relieved, some impatient. The captain announced their safe arrival, and soon the doors opened, the scent of fresh air rushing in. Flight attendants guided the passengers out, row by row, yet whispers continued. People pointed at David, smiling. Some even nodded at him with quiet respect. He lowered his head, embarrassed, not wanting attention, but the mother saw every gesture, her envy sharpening into something dangerous. When they stepped into the terminal, the crowd of passengers spread out into the bright lights of the airport. The mother adjusted her designer bag, her baby resting in her arms. She glanced at David, who carried nothing but a small worn backpack. His shoes scuffed his steps. Humble, the contrast between them was too sharp to painful. She clenched her teeth, then forced a smile. "David, thank you," she said sweetly, though her eyes glinted cold. "You truly helped me tonight." He nodded softly. "You are welcome, but—" As he turned to leave, she called after him, her voice smooth. "Wait, David, where are you going?" He paused, confused. "Home." He answered, "To my grandmother." Her smile widened, though her heart beat with darker intent. "Why not come with me just for tonight?" she said. "My house is close. I owe you more." "Then thanks, I want to repay your kindness." David hesitated. His instincts warned him. Her tone felt heavy, yet his heart remembered his grandmother's lessons: always accept kindness, never reject goodwill. He nodded slowly. "If only for tonight," he whispered. The mother smiled wider, though inside her thoughts whispered like knives. This boy had taken her power, and she would not allow him to walk away so easily. The story of the flight was only the first chapter, and now on the ground, the true storm was waiting. Airport outside glowed with harsh lights, reflecting against the polished floor. Travelers rushed in every direction, dragging luggage with tired faces. Yet within that crowd, one scene carried a strange tension. The millionaire mother walking gracefully, with her baby in her arms, and beside her, the poor boy David, his backpack hanging loosely, his steps careful, as if unsure where he belonged. People who had been on the same flight recognized them. Whispers followed their path, eyes lingered, some curious, some suspicious. The mother's smile never faded, but it was not the smile of gratitude. It was the smile of control. She held her baby close, yet every glance at David filled her chest with unease. Her pride would never allow this story to spread. She could not risk her reputation tied to a poor boy who silenced her child on a plane. She needed to control the narrative. She needed to bend it back into her hands. David walked quietly, his eyes scanning the signs of the airport. He had only flown once, and this new city felt massive. He wanted to find the bus that would take him toward his grandmother's home. Yet, when the mother touched his shoulder gently, her voice calm, he stopped. "Why not stay with me tonight?" she said. "My house is close. It will be late. By the time you reach your family, my driver can take you tomorrow morning. You saved me. You saved my baby. Let me return something to you." Her tone was soft, but behind her eyes there was a pressure, a command. David hesitated, his heart heavy with doubt, yet his grandmother's lessons echoed inside him. Never turn away kindness, even if it comes from strange hands. He nodded slowly, agreeing. Her smile widened, though the shadow in her mind deepened. The car waited outside, sleek black, shining under the lamps. The driver bowed, opening the door. David felt small, stepping into such a vehicle. His backpack clutched tightly. He sat stiff as the city lights blurred past. The mother watched him carefully, her baby asleep again, yet still reaching once toward David in its dreams. The sight twisted her heart, filling it with both jealousy and fear. The mansion appeared soon, towering gates opening into a world of wealth. The car stopped in front of glowing windows, chandeliers shining through the glass. David stepped out, eyes wide. He had never seen such a place. Marble floors, gardens with fountains, statues rising against the night sky. It looked like another world compared to his small apartment. His voice barely a whisper. "Is this where you live?" She nodded proudly. "Yes, this is my home, and tonight it is yours to inherit." The mansion servants moved quietly, bowing to the mother. None dared to ask about the boy, though their eyes lingered confused. David's worn shoes left faint marks against the polished floor, the contrast almost painful. The mother guided him into a guest room larger than his entire home. The bed soft like clouds, curtains heavy with gold. She smiled gently. "Rest here tonight. Tomorrow I will send you home safe." He bowed his head, whispering thank you. Yet, when the door closed behind her, her smile vanished, replaced by sharp calculation. She carried her baby into her private chamber, pacing her thoughts, racing. The boy carried something strange, something dangerous. The world could twist this story into her shame unless she acted. Carefully she whispered to herself, "No one can know he saved my child. No one can use this against me." That night, David lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, his heart uneasy. Though the room was soft and warm, he felt the weight of something pressing against him, as if unseen eyes were watching. The silence of the mansion was too loud to perfect. He thought of his grandmother waiting for him, her cooking, her laugh. He thought of his little sister who needed him, and the ache of homesickness burned inside. Suddenly, a sound echoed down the hall, faint footsteps, slow, measured. He sat up, listening. The door creaked slightly. He tensed, but it was only the mother standing there, her baby in her arms, her eyes softer than before. She stepped inside, speaking in a whisper. "David, my baby woke again. She will not sleep unless you are near. Please, can you help?" He rose slowly, hesitant, but her plea sounded genuine. He followed her into the chamber, the baby restless but not crying until David began humming once more. The small child relaxed, instantly drifting into calm. The mother watched closely, her lips trembling with both awe and anger. How could her child prefer him over her? Tears burned her eyes, but she forced a smile, whispering thank you. As David turned to leave, she touched his arm, holding him there, her voice sharp though quiet. David, do you know what people will say if they hear this story? They will mock me. They will mock my family, my empire. My name will be ruined. She stepped closer, eyes burning. Do you understand what you have done tonight? You took my control away. David froze, confusion in his eyes. I only wanted to help, he whispered. I never wanted to harm you. She shook her head harshly. You cannot understand. You come from nothing. You do not know what power means. Her words cut, but David stood still, his voice trembling but strong. My grandmother always said, power means nothing if you cannot use it to help someone. Her face darkened, her pride refusing to accept those words. She hissed softly, you think you are wise. You are just a boy with a song, yet that song may destroy Maine. That moment David realized that truth. She did not see him as savior. She saw him as threat. Her kindness was not real. It was a mask. He stepped back, his hand tightening around his backpack. I should leave, he said firmly. She stared at him, her breath heavy. No, not yet. Before he could respond, the baby stirred again, reaching out its tiny hand toward him, not her. The sight crushed her heart with unbearable weight. Rage filled her chest. She wanted to scream, yet silence held her. She whispered in a broken voice, why does she choose you? What have you done to her? David shook his head. I did nothing. She just feels safe. The mother's tears fell, but behind them burned fire. That night David locked his door, placing a chair beneath the handle. His instincts screaming, he lay awake, humming softly to himself a prayer for strength. Down the hall, the mother paced like a caged lion, her baby asleep yet her soul restless. She whispered again and again, I cannot allow this. He cannot walk away with my power. Tomorrow I will decide what must be done. And as the first light of dawn touched the mansion, David rose, with heavy eyes, ready to face whatever storm awaited him. The morning sun spilled through the tall windows of the mansion, painting golden lines across the marble floors. David rose from the soft bed, but his heart felt heavier than ever. He pressed his small backpack against his chest, whispering to himself that he needed to leave soon. His grandmother was waiting, his sister was waiting. He could not stay in this place, where shadows walked behind every smile outside the door. The hall was silent too. Silent servants moved like ghosts, their eyes avoiding his, as if they had been told not to speak to him. He walked slowly toward the grand staircase, each step echoing against the stone walls. His instincts sharpened with every sound. He felt as though unseen eyes followed him from the portraits that lined the walls, their painted faces cold and judging. At the bottom of the staircase, the millionaire mother stood, tall, her baby in her arms, her beauty flawless, but her expression unreadable. Her lips curved in a smile that felt heavy with something unspoken. Good morning, David, she said, her voice calm, her eyes sharp. Did you sleep well? He bowed his head softly. Yes, thank you. She nodded slowly, almost too slowly, then motioned toward the dining hall. Come eat before you leave. I have prepared something for you. David hesitated but followed. The scent of rich food filled the room, roasted meat, fresh bread, golden fruit laid out like a feast. His stomach clenched. He had not eaten well in many weeks, yet his heart warned him that every bite here would cost more than hunger. She gestured to the seat beside her. Sit, David, you are my guest. He sat carefully, his hands folded in his lap, his backpack never leaving his reach. The baby in her arms stirred, reaching again toward him. The mother stiffened, her smile cracking. She placed the child in a cradle near the table, her voice sharp though wrapped in sweetness. You have such a strange gift, David. Do you even understand what you carry? He looked down, shaking his head softly. No, I only sing. She leaned closer, her voice lowering. But this is not only a song, it is something else, something that takes what is mine. She hissed the last word, pressing her hand against the table, her nails tapping against the polished wood. David raised his eyes, calm but firm. I did not take anything. Your baby only needed peace. She needed love, not power. Her face darkened with rage. She whispered, do not speak to me about love. You know nothing about my world. Her voice trembled, yet behind it burned desperation. She stood suddenly, her chair scraping the floor. She turned toward the cradle, lifting her baby again, her hands shaking. She looked at David, her eyes wet with fury and grief. This is my child. She said, my blood, my legacy, and yet she looks at you as if you are her protector. David stood slowly, his voice steady. I never wanted to take her from you. I only wanted to help. She stepped forward, clutching the baby tightly, but in her heart, the battle raged between gratitude and jealousy. Gratitude for silence, jealousy for being replaced. Her pride could not accept defeat. Her wealth could not buy back what she lost in that moment. She made her choice. She motioned to the servants who had been waiting in the shadows. They stepped forward, tall, strong, their eyes avoiding David's. She spoke in a voice cold and sharp, take him out of my house now. The servants hesitated for a moment, as if unsure he had saved the child. He had done no wrong, yet the power of her command forced them forward. David clutched his backpack tighter, his small frame bracing. He looked at her one last time, his voice quiet but clear. You are making a mistake. Servants grabbed his arms, pulling him toward the door. His feet scraped against the marble, but he did not fight. He only turned his head back. As the baby cried suddenly louder than ever, screaming, reaching for him, her tiny hands stretched out toward David, her voice breaking through the hall. The mother froze, her heart stopping. The servants halted mid-step. The cry echoed, filling the mansion. Tearing at every wall, the baby's eyes locked on David, tears streaming down her cheeks. The boy turned his head, his eyes soft. He began to hum faintly, though his lips barely moved. The sound carried even across the hall. The baby stilled her cries, softening her hands, reaching her eyes, closing slowly into calm. The mother gasped, her knees weakening, her grip tightening around her child. The servants looked at her, waiting for the next command, but her face was torn apart by fear and realization. Her baby had chosen him, not her, not wealth, not power. Him, the poor boy with nothing. She fell into the nearest chair, her breath heavy, her pride broken into pieces. She whispered through trembling lips, leave him. The servants released David, stepping back, unsure of the storm they stood within. David stood tall, though small, his eyes never leaving hers. He spoke gently but firmly, do you see? Now it is not about me, it is about her. She feels my heart because I have nothing but love to give you. Have everything, yet you give her fear. Her lips trembled, her tears falling onto the baby's head. She wanted to scream, she wanted to deny it, yet the truth cut too deep. The room fell silent. Only the sound of the baby's soft breathing remained. David stepped forward slowly, placing his hand gently against the baby's small fingers. Her grip tightened instantly, the child calm once more. The mother watched helpless, unable to move, unable to speak. Her world crashing around her. Then David pulled his hand away, gently turning toward the door, his voice calm. I must go, my family needs me. The mother opened her mouth to stop him, but no words came, her pride still alive, her fear still burning. She watched as he walked toward the great doors of her mansion, the servants silent, the baby whimpering softly once more. But just as he reached the threshold, her voice finally broke. Wait, she cried, her tone filled with desperation and pain. He stopped his hand on the door, her words trembling. I cannot raise her without you. She needs you, not me. Please stay. David froze, his back stiff, his heart heavy. He wanted to run, he wanted to escape, but his soul ached for the child, who reached for him again and again. He turned slowly, his eyes filled with sorrow. You do not need me, he said. You need to learn what love is. Without it, no wealth, no power can calm her. She collapsed into the chair, sobbing quietly, her pride shattered, her empire nothing in that moment but a mother who did not know how to love. David stepped outside the mansion, the morning air sharp against his skin. The gates closed behind him. He walked down the road, his backpack light, yet his heart heavy. The sound of the baby's cry faint in the distance, still echoing in his ears. He whispered, a prayer for her, a prayer that one day she would know peace without him. But deep inside he knew the story was not over. The mother's tears were real, yet her shadow was stronger, and as he walked away from her world, he felt the weight of something unseen, a storm waiting beyond the horizon. The road stretched long beneath David's feet, the city waking slowly around him, cars honking, vendors calling, the air thick with smoke and life. His worn shoes carried him forward, yet his heart was heavy with echoes, the cries of the baby, the broken voice of the mother, the weight of a night that had changed everything. He thought of his grandmother, her warm hands, her soft voice calling him home. He thought of his sister waiting for him to return. He thought of the mansion gates closing behind him like the end of a dream. But far behind those gates, the millionaire mother sat alone in her grand hall, her baby restless in her arms. No song, no touch, no jewel, no wealth could calm the child. She rocked and whispered, tears streaking her face, yet nothing worked. The baby's cries pierced through marble walls. Servants whispered outside, afraid to enter, afraid to face the truth. The mother buried her face into the baby's blanket, whispering his name, David, again and again, the sound of it breaking her soul. The hours passed, the cries never stopped, exhaustion carved into her bones. Pride shattered completely. She realized the truth. She could not deny the boy had given her child something. She could not. She had lived her life chasing power, building walls, but her child needed warmth. She needed love, the very thing the boy carried in his song, the very thing money could not. Be driven by desperation, the mother ordered her driver to prepare the car. She clutched her baby tightly, her face pale, her voice sharp, yet trembling. Take me to him, find him no matter where he is. The car roared through the streets, the driver searching every corner, the baby's cries filling the silence of the ride, until finally in the distance they saw him, the poor boy, walking slowly, his small backpack slung across his shoulder, his head bowed. The car stopped beside him. The mother stepped out, her heels clicking against the pavement, her baby still screaming. She stood before him, her pride gone, her eyes swollen from tears. She whispered, "Please, David, help me again. I cannot do this alone." He turned slowly, his eyes filled with sorrow but also compassion. He reached for the baby, gently, his humming soft, carrying through the morning air. Within moments the cries melted into quiet, the baby's tiny hands resting against his chest, eyes closing in. The mother watched with trembling lips, her knees weak. She whispered, "How do you do this? How can you give her what I cannot?" David looked at her calmly, his voice steady. "Love is not bought. It is not demanded. It is given freely," he said. "You guard yourself with walls of pride, but she does not need walls. She needs a heart. She needs your heart." The words pierced deeper than any blade. The mother fell to her knees, in the middle of the street, her baby asleep, now against David's chest, her tears soaking the ground. She sobbed, "I never knew how to love. I only knew how to win. I only knew how to keep control." She looked up at him, her voice breaking. "Teach me, please, teach me." "Who's teach me how?" David shook his head softly. "No one can teach love. You must open yourself. You must break the chains of pride. You must let yourself feel without fear." His voice was calm, his eyes steady. She listened, her heart shattering with every word. She clutched her hands to her chest, whispering, I will try for her." He handed the baby back slowly. The child stirred but remained calm in her arms, as if sensing the shift within her, as if feeling the crack in the wall that once kept love away. The mother held her close, whispering to her for the first time words not of command but of tenderness. She whispered, "I love you, my child. I love you more than anything." David watched silently, his chest heavy but his soul lighter. He stepped back, slowly preparing to leave. The mother looked up quickly, fear in her eyes. "Please, do not go," she begged. "Stay with us. Help us." He shook his head, his voice firm. "My family waits for me. They need me as she needs you. Now you have what you need within you. You must believe either." Tears fell again, but this time not from despair, but from awakening. She nodded slowly, clutching her baby with new strength, whispering, "Thank you again." And again David turned, walking down the road, his small frame fading into the distance, his song faint on the wind. The mother stood in silence, the world rushing around her, yet inside all was still. She looked at her baby, who stared back with calm eyes. For the first time she felt something she had never known, the weight of true love. Not built on power, not built on wealth, but built on giving without expecting. She pressed her lips to her child's forehead, whispering a promise: "Never again will I let pride take me from you, never again." Years later people would speak of that night on the flight. Some would remember the baby who cried without end. Some would recall the boy who silenced her with nothing but a song. Whispers of the story spread, some believing it a miracle, some calling it myth, but in the heart of the mother it remained truth, carved into her soul. The night a poor boy taught her what wealth could never be, David returned to his grandmother and sister carrying nothing but his backpack and his song. He never spoke of the mansion. He never spoke of the millionaire mother. He carried the memory quietly within him like a secret treasure. His grandmother smiled, listening to his stories, her eyes shining with pride. She told him again, as she always had, love is the strongest weapon. And in the mansion far away, the mother grew softer with each day, raising her child, not with power but with patience, not with pride but with love. Every time she rocked her daughter to sleep, she hummed a tune, simple and gentle, the song of the boy who saved her, the song that changed everything. The world is filled with battles, some fought with wealth, some with power, but the greatest are fought with hearts, and sometimes the poorest soul carries the richest gift. The end.